tell you that you and Megan are sharing this mic? No. This whole is on there.
Right here. Right next to me. Yeah, you need super. You ain't got to have many more chances. I know it. Who you want? Hey, I read your article in the paper today. So I hid the paper in my throat. I told you, the meeting today, we just try to do at least 4%. Springfield may have listened. We could. Hey, I'm trying to put you on the spot. I think you're all asking at least 5%. Yeah, you got to. We had a zoning deal the other day. I was thinking here.
Again, are you?
Looks like y'all need to be am I right? They need to be separate. I just got a couple more things that you'll need to sign.
Okay, I'll put those there. Michael, is a meeting minute? It's just, we didn't miss an approval, did we, to find the quorum? I want to make sure, I'm sure. Okay. I couldn't, it was MPS. It was MPS. Hey, it's time. Are we ready now? Good morning, everyone. It is 10:15 exactly, and we're going to call to order this executive board meeting of the Greater Nashville Regional Council. First item for you all today is the approval of the minutes from the January 19th meeting. January 19th.
Second.
Motion by Mayor Moore, second by Mayor Pitts. Are there any additions or corrections requested? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Opposed, please say no. Okay, the minutes are approved unanimously. We will move on now to the opportunity for public comment. If there's anyone here today that would like to comment, you may certainly do so. We ask that you use this podium. I'm also going to take a moment and remind all members of this executive board that if you are commenting today, please use a microphone for the benefit of the people that are in the back of the room and also the people that are online. That would help everyone, so please do that. So right now, public comment is open. If you'd like to speak, you may come forward. Okay, seeing no one, we'll declare public comment closed, and we'll move on to the action items. The first is the monthly financial report, and for that, I'm going to introduce Megan Nelson.
All righty, thank you, Mayor Brown. Just to reiterate, the full copy of the January monthly financial report is located within your packet. However, I'll go over a brief snapshot of GNRC's financial standing by way of our 6 core metrics here on the screen. So as of January 31, 2022, 0% of membership dues were paid, and this is obviously on par with our assumption because those invoices did not go out until the end of January, so no worries there. As it pertains to our annual operating budget, 43% of the budget has been expended through the end of January, with 57% remaining from months February through June. GNRC saw a significant increase in its cash on hand from 10 days in December to now 56 days in January. If you recall our last meeting, we discussed being on trend to receive upwards to about $2 million in outstanding invoice payments, and we were on par with our assessment, so we saw pretty positive gains and impacts to our cash flow, just overall liquidity in the month of January. Moving on, as it pertains to our cash savings, GNRC had $1.53 million dispersed across our capital fund, dedicated match, and cash reserves. Of the 35 established program budgets that we have in the overarching operating budget, all 35 of those programs are still operating within budget. And lastly, of the $2.3 million that we had outstanding from invoice payments, 77% of those funds have been received to date. Okay, and just to circle back on the membership dues, since those notifications went out at the end of January, we've received 56% of dues to date. So we want to thank you guys for having such a prompt response to those invoices. However, if you're within that 44% category, please feel free again to contact us with any questions, but definitely please review so we can wrap that up here. But just a quick overview, our cash balance overall dispersed between our operating and reserve accounts, $2.9 million. We had a total of $5.7 million received from invoices, 2.3 roughly, and payments due, with a total revenue of $8.9 million. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, there's a brief overview of the financial report. The full financial report is available online, as noted in your packet. If you have looked at that or would like to look at it at this point or any time in the future, please do so. A motion to approve the financial report would be appropriate. Motion by Mayor Pitts, second by Mayor Anderson. Are there any comments, questions, or discussion requested on that? Okay, all in favor of approving the monthly financial report, please say aye. Opposed, please say no. It is passed unanimously. The next action item is Resolution GNRC 2022-07, authorizing the Executive Director to execute office lease agreements or extensions. And for that, our legal counsel, Candy Henry, will present.
Good morning. As many of you will recall, a few years ago, GNRC sold its office space on Union Street downtown, and since that time, we've been located in two separate office spaces. And while the board has already authorized some consultants to help us figure out the next best steps for office space, considering the needs of the board, the constituents that we serve, and of course the changing workplace dynamics that I think we've all seen over the last couple of years, we do have some decisions that need to be made in the interim. Our lease at the Butler's Run property downtown is currently just month to month because we're over on it, and our lease at the Metro Center premises will end in the end of December of this year, although there's the potential for an extension there under the current lease. So what we're proposing is that the board authorize Michael to work in consultation with the Finance and Personnel Committee to explore our options for the near term, and that he be authorized to enter into any leases or other agreements that are necessary to get us into some appropriate office space. This is essentially the same action that was taken 4.5 years ago when GNRC sold its building. And at that time, a resolution authorized Michael to take the steps necessary to secure reasonable and necessary office space. All this is reflected in the resolution that should have been in your board packet, and the staff's recommendation is approval of the resolution. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Anyone with any questions for Ms. Henry? Have a level of comfort with that? Mr. Skipper, did you want to say anything in addition? Okay. All right. Motion by Mayor Holt to approve. I'm sorry, did someone? Okay, motion by Mayor Holt, second by Mayor Moore. Any discussion? All in favor of approval of Resolution 20? Oh, I'm so sorry.
You said you were doing a study with a consultant. We hear from. I understand you. I thought you said you were doing some type of a study with a consultant. When would we expect that to come back?
I would yield to Michael on that. Do you need the microphone?
Yeah, thank you, Katie. Thanks for the question, Mayor Moore. So the funding for the consultant study was included in the budget that was adopted last September. We expect the RFP to go out this week to find that consultant to help us think through short, mid, and long-term options for our office space needs. And that'll be something that we coordinate directly with the Finance and Personnel Committee and then forward on any discussion that's relevant to the larger regions of this body.
Anyone else? Okay, we have a motion and a second. This is GNRC Resolution 2022-07. All in favor of approval, please say aye. Opposed, please say no. It is approved unanimously. Item C is Resolution GNRC 2022-08, adopting the area plan for aging and disability services for Northern Middle Tennessee. And Sarah Fowler, the Director of Aging and Disability Services, is going to make her presentation.
Good morning. Let me just swing this. Is that better? Good morning. I'm Sarah Fowler, the Director for our Aging and Disability Services here at GNRC, and it's nice to see you all here this morning. One of the things that we need from you, our board, is for you to overview and adopt our area plan. So this morning, I just kind of want to briefly talk about the history of the Older Americans Act, what the area plan is and why it's important, and then just kind of hit on some of our objectives so you have a better understanding of what we have in it. So the Administration for Community Living, which is federal level, and the Tennessee Commission on Aging and Disability, which is our state agency, has designated GNRC the region's Area Agency on Aging and Disability, which we call the AAAD, because we like our acronyms. In this role, the agency is responsible for various parts of the Older Americans Act. AAADs were established through the Older Americans Act in 1973. It was one of the first federal initiatives that was in order to provide comprehensive services for older adults. The AAAD's purpose is to help maximize private and public resources to ensure that essential services are available to minority, frail, rural, and income older adults to help people maintain and remain in their homes if that's possible. So GNRC, as the AAAD, we are responsible for developing a 4-year area plan that outlines the comprehensive and coordinated system for the purpose of facilitating accessibility and utilization of all of the supportive services and nutrition services provided in our planning and service area. So, the Older Americans Act was, again, the first federal level initiative aimed at providing comprehensive services for older adults. It was passed in '65 as part of President Johnson's Great Society initiative with the goal of supporting older adults to live at home and in the community with dignity and independence for as long as possible, because that's what we all want, I believe. It created the National Aging Network, comprising of the Administration on Aging on the federal level, the state units on aging, which is TCAD, our state agency, and the area agencies on aging at the local level, which GNRC is one of those. Okay. So Title III of the Older Americans Act is to encourage and assist state and local agencies in the development of comprehensive and coordinated in-home and community-based long-term services for older adults. Approximately 70% of the funding comes through the Title III programs, and our area plan outlines how GNRC will allocate funding from the Older Americans Act and TCAD to achieve the objectives in the Act. So on the screen, you'll see a breakdown of the programs, the program areas that relate to the program areas that we deliver at GNRC, and along with our partners. So we have supportive services, and that one of our main things is our helpline through that, where people can call for information and assistance, and that's where if they need services, that's like our entry point. It also provides transportation, adult day centers, legal services. We have nutrition services, which are our congregate meals and our home delivered meals, which we found those really important during the pandemic. That was one way that we could really support our older adults. Disease prevention, we do that mainly through our evidence-based programs, which are mainly provided through our senior centers. Family caregiver support, which provides education and support for caregivers. And it used to be just adults caring for their parents or older adults. That has broadened, so we can provide for caregivers who are caring for grandchildren or other relative caregivers, because that has become such a huge need. And then ombudsman and elder abuse. So we want to look for advocacy for older adults and help prevent elder abuse and neglect. So the State Plan on Aging is required by the Older Americans Act and provides the framework for the state and its partners to provide a comprehensive and coordinated system. The State Plan also helps provide policymakers, service providers, and the general population with the appropriate data about trends and implications for the current population, as well as the impact of the increase of the aging population. And we develop our area plan in concert with our state plan so that we can make sure that we are helping to support the state goals on a local level. And so our role as the AAAD is to assist communities in targeting resources from all appropriate sources to meet the needs of older adults with the greatest economic or social need. We coordinate and offer services that help older adults remain in their homes, if that is their preference, aided by services such as home-delivered meals, homemaking, personal care, and other supports. By offering a range of supports, it makes it possible for those individuals to remain at home if that's possible. So in our area plan outlines our objectives, again, to support our state plan, and it details the strategies that we'll use to implement the services and programs. And so some of those things are helping to procure and coordinate the provider network. Right now, we are in the process of sending out our RFPs for providers for our services. It also helps us serve as the gateway to information and assistance, screen individuals for eligibility, connect those individuals to services, and then track the service delivery and monitor the quality of those programs. So just to kind of give you an overview of the objectives in our area plan that supports the state plan, we have 6 main themes. So first objective is to provide exceptional customer service. And while we want to do this across the board at all times, we mainly focus on this through our helpline, our information and assistance, where we refer people to appropriate resources or help them access services. We also do this through the services and programs offered by our senior centers, through the nutrition programs and services available to eligible Middle Tennesseans. We want to help senior centers do this by making them places for older adults to find community and enrichment. And we want to support transportation programs in the region to increase access to reliable transportation for older adults. We also want to do this by ensuring that clients are the focus of our guardianship program. Another main objective in our area plan is to increase our partner network advocacy and education of our programs. We need people to know about them in order to be able to access them. So by working with partners, we can provide older adults and adults with disabilities opportunities to fill social needs and alleviate social isolation. We want to educate long-term care residents and citizens on services available through our ombudsman program so that they know that they have an advocate. We want to ensure that the needs of older adults are considered when partners are planning for transportation in the region. And we want to improve awareness and understanding of our guardianship program among our partners and the public in the region. Another main objective is to improve awareness of programs and services. So we want to promote our information assistant line so people know where they can call for information, how they can access that. We'll want to increase awareness of service and supports for our relative caregivers, because that is something we're expanding constantly and we want more people to know about that. We want to increase public awareness of elder abuse and what to do about it. And we want to support access to legal assistance service for eligible individuals. Another main objective is to expand capacity for providing and promoting services. And to do this, we want to continue to try to increase legal services provided. We want to continue to offer evidence-based programming to older adults in our region through our senior centers and other partners. And we want to ensure that our SHIP assistance, or our state health insurance program, which is also our Medicare counseling program, is available and accessible throughout the region. And again, another objective is to ensure access to a reliable service network. So we want to make sure that our clients who are receiving in-home services through options in the Older Americans Act and Family Caregiver have access to a variety of services from a reliable network of in-home providers or from self-direction program. We want to work with partners to offer a variety of nutrition programs to meet their needs. We want to support and enhance a multidisciplinary response to elder abuse and neglect and exploitation that would involve APS, ombudsman, legal assistance, law enforcement, healthcare professionals, and financial institutions, because we believe that a more comprehensive approach is what we need in order to make that elder abuse more identified. that's all I have, and Michael will take over the rest. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. I want to thank you for your oversight of the development of the area plan that we're presenting this morning, and preparations for today's presentation and the January presentation that you made, which was a very passionate overview of the day-to-day issues that older adults face across Middle Tennessee and how this body is in a position to help alleviate some of the issues and concerns that folks face as they grow older. I have a few more remarks en route to providing the staff recommendation. I also want to just talk about a little bit the creative approach to community engagement that the staff took this year. This is a federally required plan. It's further required by the Tennessee Commission on Aging and Disability. So there's important sort of recurring business at play here, and we would be doing this because we're required to do so regardless. But I think it's really important to us as a regional organization to make sure that we're reaching out to our partners, some of you are in the room today, to make sure that we're allocating the funds that are made available at the state and federal level for Middle Tennessee in the ways that y'all think are important. We had a public hearing on March 8th that was hosted by 50 Forward, well attended by community partners as well as the staff of GNRC. I think one of the important aspects of this planning process has been the true integration of our approach to developing this plan. So we've really good participation from our research and analytics team, our community regional planners, including the transportation planners that you see each month at the NPO meetings, very interested in figuring out how to make long-range plans for transportation, serve the needs of older adults, so we're not having to spend so much time and resources, whack-a-moling sort of the issues that happen on a day-to-day basis when you don't have a good transportation system in place for older adults. That is certainly not the only community engagement that we've done. So the March 8th day was an important day for us, but this area plan is going to be updated on an annual basis. A major adoption every 4 years, annual updates thereafter, and it's important that we continue to talk to folks throughout. So we have a live survey now that is intended for each of you all to take at gnrc.org/survey/aging for you to pass that survey along to members of your community to help us understand the day-to-day issues that they're facing and how we can align our public policies and our funding allocations to the priorities of Middle Tennesseans. But we also intend in very short order after the adoption of this plan to begin really getting in the weeds with our providers who are experiencing some real challenges from workforce and reimbursement rate standpoint. We need to understand the business model that exists in the private sector to deliver these services, to see what we can do to give them a lifeline to stay in the industry as long as possible. We've got huge wait lists for a lot of these services, and part of that is because there just aren't the providers across Middle Tennessee and the state to provide the services that are in demand. More surveys and conversation with clients of our services and our partner organizations. So we're just very committed to making sure that this is not a once every 4-year conversation that we're having with the community. And then finally, I mentioned the survey that is active now. Again, this is an ongoing community conversation. Really ask and look to each of you to take this survey. We'll put this in your emails as well. But forward this out to your departments, forward it out to your senior centers, constituents that you come across who are in need of assistance at the local level. Looking to hear as much as we can as we begin to implement the area plan that we've brought to you for adoption today. One other item that's embedded within the request that we have for you today is that the federal regulations require us to submit a request for waiver to allow us to directly provide some of the services that are in the area plan. So our primary role is coordination, sort of the policy making, through the coordination, the collaboration, and ultimately to sort of procure a network of providers to deliver services. There are some services that we deliver directly as an organization, one being case management for in-home services primarily. Service coordinators that we have on staff go out into the homes of folks to assess their needs and then to directly connect them to services that might be provided by a provider. So that case management is work that we do directly. We also do case management for the National Family Caregiver Support Program, which is aimed at alleviating some of the burden that's put on families and friends who are taking care of older adult loved ones. So we do case management for that program too. So that's sort of a technical element that's embedded within the staff recommendations today is The resolution will also formally approve our request for a waiver to directly provide those services. The action otherwise is pretty simple. It's to approve the 4-year area plan, knowing that we'll update this annually and bring that back before this body about each March. You see we've programmed $8.3 million for the coming year, and you can see the distributions there in terms of where that money is going. 2/3 of the money going directly out to the community in the form of services. And then you see the GNRC personnel costs. Some of it is for project management, but a lot of it is for direct services that I just mentioned through the explanation of the request for a waiver. So with that, I want to give everybody Sarah Fowler's contact information and want to thank all of the Aging Disability Program staff and Rebecca Nofi, our volunteer coordinator, and Rachel Slava, our community outreach coordinator and supportive. And Kristen Scuderi, who is really the quarterback for this entire process. So with that, Madam Chair, turn it back over to you. Be happy to entertain questions from the board. We also ask that this body hold a public hearing prior to the adoption of the plan.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Fowler. It's always nice to be reminded of all the ways that this agency and your division touches our older Americans in this region. So thank you for all the work that you do, the work on the plan, and certainly the work of the staff for supporting our older Tennesseans. And with that, any questions from this board? Any comments? Oh, I'm sorry.
So I just want to make sure that that partnership is happening, and that I can help Sarah and what President here with some confidence or some people to get in touch with to have conversations. I think that's a real good thing.
Yeah, and go ahead, Diana.
Yeah, and then the only thing on the last one was you have the breakout and cost and all of that. I felt like you're showing 56% of the money going out, which means 44% staying in for cost, to do the service, and part of that is your case management. You might want to break that out because 40% overhead and 44% overhead is really high. And that's not showing the true story. So you might want to break that out so it's really showing that case management is this, and this is actually the cost of management, for all those.
Yes, sir.
And I think that will look better for the public, because right now the public there is thinking about in this type of situation, more money in out, more out, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I should be remiss if I didn't point out that Metro Social Services and the Mid-Cumberland Human Resource Agency are our two largest providers in the region. So a lot of the money that is going to be distributed out to providers are going to be going through Metro Social Services and Mid-Cumberland HRA for a range of services that they're going to be delivering directly to Middle Tennesseans. And I do agree with you. We don't want anybody to leave with the impression that it's a 44% overhead. The way the budgeting works, the budget is detailed in the online version of the actual plan itself. And then that money will be embedded within each of our annual budgets that are presented to full council in September. That's where we'll actually adopt the real budget. This is a program budget versus an actual budget. And a lot of that 44% it's not overhead. It is the information and assistance counseling that we're doing. It's the case management that we're doing. So it's basically paying for those direct services, which are quite sizable in terms of their costs. But I think it's a good, yeah, absolutely. That's right. Right. I appreciate the opportunity to clarify it for everybody.
Great comments. Thank you. Anyone else? Mayor Anderson?
Break out a percentage or the number of aging by county into not today, because you send us that information.
You mean as far as services or population breakout?
Both.
Yes.
And question number 2, how much money did we receive for the aging? You make reference to it, but you didn't give us a total of all about it that's coming up in Washington.
Yeah, It's been, the last 2 years have been, a lot different. We have our normal recurring funding through the Older American Act. And then, I don't know, you want to?
I'm happy to help, but you have a good handle on the traditional funds and then the additional money that we're getting from the CARES Act and Aarp.
In the last 2 years, it's been quite different. This will tell you where the Older American Act funding levels have been. Breaks it down from the entire country, state, and then what GNRC receives. So overall, we get about 20% of the statewide funds. Our state agency, or TCAD, has an allocation, a statewide allocation funding formula that they use, and it sometimes varies by program depending on how they do it. So they might use population or caseload size. There's just different variables that they use. So this kind of breaks it down. The last 2 years, we've received additional funding. First was Families First funding that we spent that was 2020. So that was the initiative to work with local restaurants to provide meals to older adults. Then we had the CARES Act, which was very similar to our Older American Act recurring funds. It kind of had the same purpose of funding to go towards in-home services, to go towards legal assistance, ombudsman, nutrition, our traditional programs, basically the programs you see up there. We've also received COVID-3 funding, which is specifically for meals. That went mainly to Mid-Cumberland Human Resource Agency so that they could address people on their waiting list for meals. Mid-Cumberland and Metro Social Services have been so amazing as far as the way they have provided meals and ramped up services for seniors over the last 2 years. Like, I cannot say enough about the work that they've done and the ways that they have made it work and provided for people. We've also received just recently Vaccine 5 funding, which will go towards, that should have been received about a year ago in order to pay for transportation for people who need a vaccine or boosters. We're still sending those out to local transportation providers. We're using some volunteer, like Senior Ride Nashville, Wilson Rides. There's Community Life in Sumner County and Mid-Cumberland. We're using that funding to go to them so that they can pay for rides if an older adult needs to go get a vaccine or a booster. And then we are also receiving Aarp funds, which we have not started to access those since we are still working on our CARES funding. So that might have been more than you wanted, but.
But you did answer. Thank you.
So, and that's a good question. We do work with the VA and another agency called Pennyrile to provide the Veterans Self-Directed Program. That all of those veterans come through us specifically through the VA. So if they want to access that program, we have to send them to the VA. We cannot just simply start services. But any veteran that calls us for assistance, if we can help them, we're going to do that. We don't really distinguish as far as when somebody calls in. We just want to make sure that they're eligible for our funding that we have, and then we want to provide services. So the only time we distinguish is if they participate in our Veteran Self-Directed Program.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Sarah. And I would mention in terms of tracking where the money is going, every single transaction is in the database. And I believe what veteran status is a identifier that so even if it's not specifically a veteran-aimed program, we can get a sense of how many veterans are being served with the general pool of funding that we have. Mm-hmm. And bring those metrics to you if you like. Speaking of metrics, if you're interested in understanding sort of the degree to which your specific community is getting older, Max and his team have an aging disability dashboard at gnrc.org/dashboards. That's the same location as the crash data dashboards and the dashboards that are showing in migrations, population growth, jobs forecasts across Middle Tennessee. But it's a good place to go if you're interested in sort of the state of aging within your community. The one last thing I'll say from staff's perspective is that when you look at the report that I mentioned that's online, Diana, it's a templated document. So we're just basically filling in a template that the state is using across the state of Tennessee for all 9 area agencies that exist here. We are working to develop a much more publicly accessible version of that document so people understand the issues that exist and how we're seeking to address them without having to sort of get through sort of the technical elements that are required in the document that will be submitted to TCAT and ultimately the ACL at the federal level.
Yeah, and also our state plan or our area plan is pretty narrow focus, and it is a template that we get from our state agency. So it's very prescribed what we need to provide. And so what Michael's talking about is there are other ways we want to work in the community. We want to serve older adults. And so that is going to be more of a comprehensive plan, more of ways we can partner outside of our traditional funding and ways we can work. So we're really excited to also work on that plan as well.
Any additional questions or comments, anyone? If not, then we'll move on to the public hearing. And so at this time, I would welcome anyone to the podium that would like to make comments in the public hearing related to this approval.
Thank you. I'm Grace Smith, Director of AgeWell Middle Tennessee, formerly the Council on Aging of Greater Nashville. I'm pleased to be here to support GNRC in the area plan and just emphasize how vital these services are for older adults throughout our region. We, as a nonprofit, receive calls every day from older adults and their families looking for help, not knowing where to turn. So I know how vital the information and assistance services are. And what we're finding, particularly in the past 2 years, is people are calling with basic needs for food, for more affordable housing, for transportation, things that we might take for granted. There are people out there struggling and having to make a choice between whether they pay for their groceries or their medication. And so it is vital that we partner as nonprofits with the Area Agency on Aging and with you all as city leaders to address these issues. But we also need to bring in philanthropy in the private sector. And here's why. And here's part of what I wanted to say today is really a call to action. We have 10,000 baby boomers turning 65 every day in our country now through 2029. And what that looks like in Middle Tennessee is the older population is a little over 500,000 now in Middle Tennessee. In the next 20 years, it's going to grow 60% to 835,000. We do not have the infrastructure in place that we need to support that type of growth. And there's so many needs. The median income of older adults in our region is $45,000 a year. With the cost going up, it's really hard to live on a fixed income with that amount of money. We know that 22 to 25% of older homeowners are cost burdened. 50% of renters are cost burdened. They're paying more than 30% of their income. So we are very concerned and need your help to prioritize these issues and to make this an integral part of the work you do with GNRC. It's going to take all of us working together to address the needs, and particularly around affordable housing, transportation, family caregiver support, and food. Again, basic needs. We know that the majority of caregivers of older adults are working, and they're really struggling to balance work and family. 3 million women have left the workforce during the pandemic because of child care and elder care challenges. So these are issues that impact us, and we need to be talking about them more. We need to be working together to address them, and we need to find additional dollars to invest in solutions. So that's my call to action, but I did want to support the area plan. We're very pleased to be a partner with GNRC as a nonprofit, and like I said, it's going to take all of us working together to make sure that we can all age well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments, and thank you for your work with your organization.
Good morning. I'm Rita Martell, and I'm the Middle Tennessee Director for Volunteers for AARP. We represent the interest of 640,000 members across the state. Many of you are our members. And I just want to agree with everything Grace said. Many of her concerns we share as well. In addition to that, we have certain target populations that we serve, and the veterans community, before I forget to mention this, is one of them, that we are making sure they're aware of the services that can be provided for them based on their needs. Another population are grandparents. Grandparents as caregivers, and we supported legislation. We're in the process of supporting that legislation right now for the state, where grandparents will receive some funding, because more and more grandparents are the caregivers, and they're at an age where they physically aren't able to do that. So the area plan does include some programs for grandparents and for the grandchildren, tutoring services and summer camp, which I think is just a wonderful program. Another area is making sure that seniors can age in place. Seniors don't want to leave their homes. They want to remain in their homes, and they want to remain in your communities. And so we have a program to help local areas, cities and counties develop what we call age-friendly communities. And many of the areas that are supported with the area plan feed into making that possible as well. So we're really happy to be a strategic partner with the AAAD and to involve each one of you in the work that we continue to do and that we will continue to do together. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak under the public hearing? If not, we'll declare the public hearing closed and move on for further discussion and/or approval. Do need a motion, Mayor Moore.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mayor Moore, second by Mayor Pitts. This is GNRC Resolution 2022-08. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor, please say aye. Opposed, please say no. Area plan is adopted. Item number 4, we move on to some informational items, and I think we always all enjoy the vital signs report, and Mr. Schultz is here to present it today, but Mr. Skipper is going to introduce it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Very excited to be with you all today to listen to this presentation of the Vital Signs Report, which is a long-standing collaboration between the Nashville Area Chamber of Commerce and the Greater Nashville Regional Council. It was really birthed, how many years ago now, Ralph? 13?
Nearly 10.
About 2013, 10 years. I remember the visit to Toronto on your leadership study mission that we were part of, getting to hear how impactful the Vital Signs report that they were doing in our region was to bring awareness to key indicators of performance for the economy and infrastructure for the metropolitan area, and was very excited when Ralph approached us about partnering on an opportunity to bring something similar to Middle Tennessee. I think all I want to say in route to introducing Ralph, who is the President and CEO of the Chamber, who will present the report today through a staff presentation, is that we just, as we adopted the area plan for aging and disability services, what you'll find is a lot of the issues that we're trying to address for older adults are the same issues we're trying to address for all Middle Tennesseans, right? It's just that as you go through your life cycle, your access to resources and your level of ability to gain those resources is going to vary. But housing, transportation, access to jobs, employers' access to workforce. Those are very similar to the range of issues that the area plan is trying to address. And it's really important that we're tracking all these things comprehensively so we can align the area plan for aging, we can align the NPO transportation plan, we can align the comprehensive economic development strategy that this body is responsible for approving as well with each other to address those broader community issues. So with that, I'll introduce Ralph Schultz, President and CEO of the Nashville Area Chamber, for this year's Vital Signs Report.
Well, Michael, thank you, and Madam Chair, thank you for the opportunity to present to this group. We're always honored to be able to present information to this group. Know that as we do present, we're scratching the surface. We're giving you sort of top-line information. If you'd like to know more specific information about vital signs and more specific information about your location, we can do that as well. Also want to thank GNRC for providing for the aging report that was just provided. I didn't realize when I was an 8th grader in 1965 that I would have such an interest in that legislation, but glad to see that information as well. A little bit of context just to get us started, and Matt Bailey, our Vice President for Regional Policy, is going to make the prime presentation here. Every 5 years since 1990, there has been a 5-year plan created for the development of economic prosperity in Middle Tennessee, which really includes 2 MSAs, the Nashville-Murfreesboro-Franklin MSA and the Clarksville-Hopkinsville MSA. The 7th iteration of that plan began on July 1st after 18 months of planning and literally thousands of inputs and research. What it tells us going forward is that we expect the population of this region to grow by 200,000 people over the next 5 years. If you follow the historical trends, about 140,000 of those people are going to be in-migrants to the area, usually young, usually educated. We expect a minimum of 150,000 jobs to be created in this area, and we've seen reports of up to 230,000 jobs to be created in this area over the next 5 years. And to put that in context, in the last 30 years, we've grown 530,000 jobs, and if we reach that 230,000 number, it will be almost half of what we did in 30 years just over the next 5 years. So the theme you see in that 5-year plan is about managing growth. We have a world-class job creation system working in Middle Tennessee right now. What we don't have is a world-class workforce creation system to fulfill those jobs. So as you look at vital signs, what you're going to see in the material that we're going to be presenting is a combination of research that we've done, surveying we've done, and you will see a real focus on that workforce development aspect. One final point as I turn it over to Matt Bailey. The expansion of jobs represents the expansion of opportunity. And we want everyone in this region to have access to that opportunity. There are things that we need to do as a community in our public-private partnership that will create the opportunity for everyone to benefit from this economic expansion. So I'm going to turn the microphone over to Matt now, who is going to present the results of vital signs. It's a 1-year snapshot of the things we need to address going forward. You will see on the next slide people who have supported this, the compilation of this report with their sponsorship, and we want to thank them. And Matt, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, Ralph. I appreciate it. And thank everyone in this room for allowing us the opportunity to be here. Michael, thank you again to you and the GNRC staff for partnering on vital signs each year. We definitely couldn't put this report together without you guys, so thank you again. This is my 3rd edition of Vital Signs to be a part of. This is the first one I've been in person to present. The last 2 have been behind a computer screen, so it's a joy to be here with everyone today. So just want to expand on what Ralph mentioned a moment ago about vital signs being informed by a resident survey that goes out to the Nashville MSA and Clarksville MSA. This year, we gathered over 3,100 responses for our vital signs survey. So the kind of value add for vital signs is not only the summary and synopsis of issues that are important to our region, but it's that resident feedback that gives feedback from a robust standpoint on those regional topics that are important to our community at large. This year, our vital signs report heavily focused on workforce and those barriers that not only Middle Tennessee is facing, the state and the country, about the barriers of residents entering the workforce or barriers that employers are experiencing on getting the workforce that they need. This year, we explored those barriers in the vein of workforce development, child care, affordable housing, and of course, transportation. So we'll spend a few minutes to walk through those few barriers. And as Ralph mentioned also, this presentation is very much high-level overview. And if you want more details, I think copies were passed out. So feel free to take those with you, look through, and we're always happy to answer questions about the report as well. At the core, all these topics have one thing in common, and that is that there'll be solutions from a regional perspective. No one community is going to solve these issues of workforce that we're experiencing currently. It's going to be a regional effort, and I know everyone in this room is ready to take that on. So at the height of the pandemic, Middle Tennessee experienced about a job loss of about 150,000. As of October of 21, we had regained about 140,000 of those jobs. At the end of the year, we had actually surpassed the recovery that we had projected in quarter three, in gaining those jobs back and experiencing an unemployment rate of pre-pandemic levels. Another challenge that we are facing as a region and as a state is labor force participation. So when you think about those challenges, think about what was mentioned earlier, baby boomers exiting the workplace, but birth rates here in Tennessee and across the country aren't keeping pace with that exit. So that's one thing to keep in mind from a labor force participation standpoint. Another thing is workforce preference has changed over the last couple years. Residents have experienced the ability to be able to work remotely from home. Therefore, changing strategies employers are going to have to walk through with their employees and really meet them where they are to see if those jobs are able to be worked remotely or in office, is going to really impact how a workforce responds to those workforce preferences. When we surveyed Middle Tennesseans, about 54% of respondents had the opportunity to work remotely throughout the pandemic. Of that 54%, about 53% still have the opportunity to work remotely. So this really is changing the landscape of workforce and labor force participation as well. Another issue that workforce is experiencing are early retirements. Again, throughout the pandemic, employees that were kind of on the cusp of that retirement age chose to go ahead and retire and leave the workforce. With the current economic state and inflation rising, some of those employees that exited are re-entering, but it's kind of yet to be seen how that will ultimately shake out from a labor force participation rate. While many Tennesseans face barriers in finding a job, such as child care, transportation needs, a significant portion of residents do not possess the skills to secure a good paying job or meet workforce needs of the future. So you'll see here, it's at least comforting to see that residents in Middle Tennessee see the need for education or training to advance their career. The Vital Signs survey revealed that 22% of respondents are currently enrolled in an education or training program, and over 30% of respondents intend to go back for training or on-the-job training within the next couple years. So that's good to hear that Middle Tennesseans recognize that they will need additional training to meet the workforce needs of the future. We touched on this a moment ago. Child care is and has been a large barrier to workforce progression. With over 146,000 households in the Tennessee area that have children under the age of 5, it really impacts parents' the ability to enter the workforce or participate and progress within the workforce. When we polled Middle Tennesseans, 41% said that child care impacted their ability to actually work. So you'll see on the slide as well, it's no surprise that those lower incomes were impacted the most when you think about child care access and affordability. Throughout the pandemic, about 1,100 of 2,300 child care centers across the state experienced closures. So again, impacted parents having to come out of the workforce and care for those children. One thing that can be done, state and local level, we believe, is examining the burdens that currently are placed on child care centers and see how we can work together as governments to lessen those burdens to allow access to more residents throughout the Middle Tennessee area. So it's no surprise that housing is a huge issue in the Middle Tennessee area and the affordability of housing. That housing cost burden question is something that we ask residents each year in the Vital Signs survey. This year, through that survey, 42% responded that they were considered housing cost burden, meaning they spend 30% of their income on housing mortgage or rent each month. Of those 42%, 43% actually find it an option to cut back on food cost to meet those housing needs. So when you think about families cutting costs to meet those needs, it's not entertainment, it's not necessarily caring for children in the vein of activities, but it's cutting back on food costs for a household. So that's a pretty big deal when we think about housing affordability across our region. As Ralph stated a second ago, our region is expected to grow greatly in the next 5 years. So that with that growth, housing affordability will continue to be an issue as we experience people moving in from other areas across the country, therefore buying up surplus of housing that could be available for lower income residents, but will end up become housing for residents that have more means. So you'll see here on the slide where we have looked at housing cost and income increases over the past 5-year period. Although incomes across the region have increased, I think it's no surprise to see that housing costs have far surpassed that percentage of increases. As we kind of talk about often, there's a general lack of housing supply throughout our region. When respondents were asked this year if they intended to move within the next 12 months, about 30% of those respondents indicated yes. Of those 30%, 15% said they were actually moving because housing was no longer affordable where they were. Again, huge issue for people to be able to stay in place where they've enjoyed their lives for many years. And so it's kind of no secret that cities and counties that want to stay competitive in gathering that workforce to meet employers' needs, we need to think about this issue of housing affordability going forward. Again, not an easy issue to solve at all, but it does need to stay top of mind for all of us as community leaders. Transportation infrastructure, I know this topic is top of mind for almost everybody in this room. When we asked vital signs respondents this year, 70% of respondents stated that issues with transportation could be a moderate or significant risk to a threat to our local economy here in Middle Tennessee. The infrastructure in Middle Tennessee was continually strained by the growth, even during the pandemic, which I know is quite surprising to many people throughout the rest of the country. But yes, Middle Tennessee did continue to grow over the last 2 years. Continued regional growth, of course, means continued increase of investment made in transportation projects across our region. Again, no surprise to many of you, I think last year this group adopted the Regional Transportation Plan, which allocated $10.5 billion through the year 2045 for transportation projects and improvements throughout the region. On the other side of the coin, it's also not a surprise that the Improve Act funding is not keeping pace with the funding need for the projects that are in the pipeline. GNRC conducted a study of 15 peer regions throughout and compared that to transportation funding here in Middle Tennessee, and found that these regions have more funding per capita than we do here in the Nashville area.
Your call has been forwarded to an 58548 is not available. At the tone.
Transportation funding is something else.
There we go.
Good one, Mike.
Hard to read those numbers, Max. If you just kind of give a little highlight of the per capita transportation spending.
Yes, we can do that. And so, the kind of takeaway here is many of these peer regions have double the funding that we have per capita here in the Middle Tennessee region. If you look at what I would think of our kind of highlighted peer regions, you look at Austin, Denver, and those regions are far more funded for transportation and transit projects than we are here in Middle Tennessee, largely in part because these regions that have more funding than we do is their local communities have dedicated funding sources for transportation and transit projects and improvements. I think it's no secret to everybody in this room that the lack of those dedicated funding sources here in Middle Tennessee and across the state hinder our ability to get those federal funds, and a lot of times
to an automatic
take
voice
matching funds.
5179.
Somebody's wanting me to stop.
At the tone, please record your message. When you have finished recording, you may hang up or press 1 for more options. We did not get your message either because you were not speaking or because of a bad connection. To disconnect, press 1. To record your message, press 2.